you considered the messages your outfits send? What do you think your clothes say about you? See, style is about the clothes, but it's not really about the clothes. Every day you make choices about what you're going to wear, but what are you communicating? Welcome to Above and Beyond Style. I'm your host, Maria DiLorenzo, and in 2019, I founded MFD Style, where I provide a unique, intuitive approach to personal styling for those ready to embrace a more meaningful look. With this podcast, I'll uncover key elements of where spirituality, psychology, and style intersect, revealing how you can make intentional wardrobe choices that reflect who you really are. So let me ask you, are you ready to transform into your authentic self? Then it's time. Come with me on this journey, and together we'll take your style above and beyond style. Hey everybody, welcome back to Above and Beyond Style. Season 5, here we are in the thick of it, working our way through these small little steps or strategies that might help us open up into that bigger impact around what our personal style could look and feel like. And remembering that number 5 in the sequence, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is all about ways to just help you start to grasp what could be that next small step you could take. We want to be able to give you some suggestions, some ideas, some strategies, but ultimately this is about an experience with you and figuring out what really works for you. So we hope that you'll listen in today to our episode and really start to think about the ways that might translate to you and your experiences. So I'm really happy to welcome back my guest conversation partner, Dr. Melissa Carrick. Missy, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Maria. So great to be here.
As always, really fun to have you. And today's topic was one that we've talked about a couple times, kind of off the record, if you will. And it came up recently, and I thought this is a perfect conversation for us to be thinking about as maybe a small step that people could take really when we're thinking about our personal style, but again, maybe even in our lives, about ways that we can start to introduce some small things to kind of open us up to new experiences and tap into more authenticity. So our topic today, you guys, is all about traveling light and learning how to pack and prepare ourselves for short-term experiences. So we're going to kind of think about this within the context of maybe 3 to 5 days or a week or so. We're not thinking about these like big month-long, 2-month-long excursions, but more the short-term kind of experience. And I will preface this by saying that I have quite a few clients who have reached out to me over the years in that panic of like, I have to pack for this thing. And it's a very stressful experience, I think, for people to have to figure out like what to wear when they're going someplace and having these experiences. And so it's been really fun for me to be able to work with people in that space to help them get clear about what do they need to bring along and what are the most important kind of features and questions that you need to ask yourself along the way as you're getting into it. So Missy and I have been talking about this. If you've been on the podcast before, you've heard that the two of us enjoy travel. Especially for me in this last year, I've really embraced the travel bug and started to really use this opportunity of figuring out where I'm going to live next and my next home and doing some experimentation in and around travel. And Missy's been such a fun partner in that, just to talk about, some of these travel pieces. And I know, Missy, for you, travel plays like a pretty big role in your life. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that for you?
Yeah, for sure. I've been a lifelong traveler. I remember having my own bag and like packing my bag for going places when I was a small child. And then as an adult, and even whether it was on an airplane to another country or another part of the US or road tripping in my dad's conversion van across the country, literally driving to New Mexico from Delaware. So travel's always been a big feature in my life. And more recently, professionally as well as for pleasure. And sometimes the big challenge is actually when those two things come together So, for example, I had a big professional event in November in Southern California, and I was
Mhm.
actually going to be presenting when I was there. So, knowing, okay, there's some very specific things that I was going to be doing, and we tacked on a surf trip to Mexico in the beginning of that. So, two very different trips. We often travel for business, we often travel for pleasure, and then combining the two. So, and it's not uncommon, Maria, that I'm actually gone 2 weekends out of the month, if
Mm.
not more than that in terms of some weekday travel, because some of those events are during the week.
Yeah, and that's such a good experience to kind of know to work from because I think if any of our listeners are new to travel or it's something that you want to do more of, or it's something that you're doing on the regular for work or for pleasure, it feels like travel can be a place where we can have these sort of consolidated experiences to play with our style and to really start to explore and understand sort of the persona that we are and how we want to show up in all these different places and experiences. And as you just mentioned, having sort of this professional, person show up versus then being on vacation with your spouse to be able to do something fun. So these are kind of different purposes. And I think many people could probably resonate by that combination experience of both, personal and for professional purposes. One thing I'll say before we dig into this, and it's something that I think is important to address early on about when we're talking about travel and packing. One thing that I have found to be kind of a common denominator when I'm talking to people about this process and getting themselves ready to pack is maybe this resonates for you, Missy, or any of us listening. I find that sometimes people like have almost like an alter ego when they're packing. It's like they have this item of clothing, let's say it's a dress, and it's like, I would probably never wear this in my day-to-day life. But for some reason, we have this sort of imaginative place and space around travel where we go somewhere and we're like, that version of Maria would wear this dress. So I'm going to bring it. And then you end up never wearing it because truth be told, it's really not the most like authentic expression of who you are. And so it just takes up space in the bag. I've had this conversation, I don't know how many times with people about this clothing that is sort of represents another version of who we are, or this other kind of imaginative place of the person that we want to be or that we wish we could be, right? And clothes have a powerful ability to represent some of those things for ourselves, but it gets a little tricky when we start to identify with our clothes for experiences and things that are just like not in sync with who we are. And I find it's often those people that struggle the most when they're packing because they're like, I want to bring this thing that I never wear, but yet somehow that feels more in alignment to them about going, maybe to a tropical location. And then you've got this big flowy dress that you would never be caught in, in your day-to-day life. So, Missy, I'm just curious as you hear me talk about that, has that resonated for you? Have you ever had that experience?
For sure. And that's where a little bit of the traveling light came from, like yourself. I often have a word that shows up or an expression that shows up for a year. And the beginning of this year, I really had this expression or this traveling light show up and looking at what does that mean? And for me, I've been working with, oh, traveling light means really trusting the authentic expression of who I am and not packing those things or not packing everything in the kitchen sink in my
Yes.
bag just in case I need it. Or what if I go out to this event and I have this restaurant or I want to feel this particular way, but instead leaning into not only my authentic expression, but trusting that I will have or that I have everything that I need. And I'm not going to have to be prepared for every possible occasion.
Yeah, that's such an important part of traveling because so many people feel like, exactly as you've just said, like anticipating all these things that may or may not ever happen. And so I've got to bring this pair of shoes if this happens, or if I have this accessory, or if I have this handbag, that it has to go with this dress that requires these shoes. And it's like this weird puzzle game that sometimes people are feeling the pressure to kind of do all of these things, and again, it's like a 3-day trip or, a 5-day trip in one place. And it's like, how and where we got the idea that all of these different circumstances are going to happen in such a short, consolidated period of time, I don't know. It's resonant for me, so it's not as if I'm pointing the fingers to other people because I know how this feels about wanting to kind of have and do all the things. But I think one of the beautiful parts of this episode, and hopefully what we can bring to our listeners today about this concept of traveling light, and it really meaning like a very focused, a very purposeful wardrobe that is for the purposes that you are traveling, right? And we're talking about like you might have combined purposes or you might have something out of the ordinary, which is all important to know. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but giving yourself the permission to say like I don't need everything to be able to have this experience and give yourself sort of that freedom to play around with, okay, well, here is the experience. This is what we're going to be doing. What do I need? And how does it then show up in your choices around what you pack and what you bring along with you? So I loved this because Missy, I know one of the things for you, you just mentioned you do quite a bit of travel. It wouldn't be uncommon for you to be gone a couple times a month for professional purposes. And so tell me a little bit about this process for you around how you came to the decision around traveling light and why that was important and where it's sort of taking you now as you move into these experiences.
Some of it is like, if I am honest, it's not wanting to be the person with the giant suitcase.
Yes.
Like, what the heck? I'm a pretty low maintenance. Like, I don't put on a big face every day. I don't have tons of hair accoutrements. I air dry my hair, etc. So it's like, why the heck am I having this ginormous suitcase when, especially in contrast with traveling to Costa Rica on a regular basis, at least once a year, sometimes more, I literally have it whittled down to I can travel very light with 5 bikinis, 3 dresses, 2 pairs of board shorts, and that's really just in case one of them rips or something happens to one of them. And 2 tank tops, and only 2 tank tops because really I would travel with one, but usually around the end of our trip, my husband says, "Can you take that tank top off? It's so dirty. What is that? It's so dusty. Like you've got to put on another one. You must have another one." So the dissonance between, especially between a trip like that, where I know I can live so simply, and I
Mm,
actually have a method that got me to traveling that lightly. So it's the contrast of that with like, why do I have this big giant suitcase? So really it
mm,
was partly my own self-consciousness. And then there's some of it where I have really been working with this concept of really who am I? What's my
mm,
through your work, what's my signature style and or really identity, who am I? So for
mm,
example, I have a trip every January where I work on a certification team in Carlsbad, Southern California, and I literally am facing the ocean on these cliffs. And I like to take my class outside.
mm.
And I remember the first year I did it, I think I literally brought 4 different pairs of boots, not to mention sneakers, and then of course flip-flops. And I didn't wear the boots. I might have even brought more. It was like ridiculous, like completely ridiculous.
Yes.
And especially because I know myself, and the more I get to know myself, the more I realize, oh, well, on any possible break or lunch break or coffee break, whatever time we have during the day, I want to head right out to those cliffs and go for a 15-minute, a 10-minute, a 20-minute walk and not be worried about my footwear choices as I'm walking on these cliffs, getting to do what I like to do, which is enjoy the sunshine. So I don't need to
Mm.
bring my chunky boots, my chunky heeled boots, as much as they would be so cute and they would make me look so fashionable. You know what? Maybe I'm going to bring my zip up, little sort of booty sneakers, half booty sneakers, and wear those all the time. And it's that intersection of function and fashion. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's such an important thing about the concept. And I appreciate what you said initially about the large suitcase. And I think more and more as travel becomes more complicated and a little bit more burdensome, if you will, I think the concept of people checking bags and wanting to pack, their carry-on luggage in a way that is really efficient and it's going to give them everything they need without having to kind of schlep around all the things, right? So there's that for sure.
Well, I mean, I wish they could be so noble as wanting to do a carry-on only and it's really about the self-consciousness of being with some of
Yes.
my peers who
Yeah.
literally have like a backpack full of stuff and going, I can be a backpack traveler. I mean, for God's sakes, I'm a simple woman.
Sure.
So, not quite as noble. And I appreciate that thought that yes, it's travel's become more complicated. It'd be great if we could just do a carry-on bag.
And having that, the ability to just sort of make that decision for yourself, right? Like, I'm going to be simple
Mhm.
on this trip. I'm not going to bring everything in the kitchen sink. And that meeting a function and fashion, I think for everyone, that resonates, right? And being able to know that we've got to make some decisions. And in that decision making process, I do find a lot of people get very overwhelmed. It's like, I don't even know where to start. Sometimes it's the process of like looking at the weather and looking at your activities. And we're not going to go into like all the nitty gritty around like how to actually pack. If you're interested in that, that's a side service that I offer and can work with you individually, privately with you on that. So little
Thank
side
God.
plug.
Thank God you offer that, Maria. I have used your services there.
And it's one of those things that we can make those decisions together, right? About what is the right choice for these different things that are happening. And that is an important part of the process of learning to pack efficiently and lightly. But I think one of the things that I really wanted to dig in with you about was to try to understand as you're doing this packing and you're wanting to have it be like a simple, you mentioned kind of a formulaic, you've got it down for this particular trip in these, particular instances that it sounds like you've got some hacks or some ideas in your brain that you kind of go to each time. Is that something you could share with us a little bit about how you do it?
Yeah, yeah. And even sometimes those hacks, I mean, like recently I needed to actually, it was perfect timing for this episode. I actually phoned a friend, essentially phoned the MFD hotline to get your support. And simply because some of my things that had been working just didn't work or they felt tired. I just felt
Yeah.
like, I'm ready. I just need something new. I need to zhuzh it up. So yeah, happy to share the hacks. Number one, I have this repeat trip to Costa Rica, and I will say, if you have a trip like that or a similar style of trip, I literally, when I'm done the trip, I take photos of everything I've worn. So I have it stacked up in a pile, and that way it's in my phone. And now I actually made a little file in my photos of those photos. So literally I have whittled this down over the past several years. And you can start to see what motivates me. My husband was actually making fun of me about at one point. This was like probably 8 years ago. Why do you bring all these things? You know, you only wear, so little of them. So I started to actually document. And then on the plane ride home, I actually made a list of what those things were from the picture. And I also made notes to myself of bring less of colon and then, bring less of, this
Brilliant.
is so silly, but bring less greens powder. When I'm in Costa Rica, I'm eating fresh food all the time. I don't want greens powder. I don't use greens powder. So bring less of it.
Mm.
Bring less tea bags. For some reason, I have this obsession with tea bags. Like they're not going to have any tea. So that made it on my list several times. And happy and proud to say that this year on our trip, I brought exactly the right amount and came home with a way emptier bag for a number of things that I bring with us. So that's definitely hack number one. I have plenty more though.
Yeah, may I introduce one thought I have about that in particular around, I think there are many people have probably heard about outfit tracking and the concept of sort of tracking what you do and do not wear in your day to day. And I think that's a really helpful tool if that appeals to you. I know people that are like, I would never do that. There's no chance I could be that diligent or disciplined. And then there are other people that are like, ooh, I love that. I'd love to know like how many times have I worn that in XYZ circumstance? So I know that like actually I do really enjoy wearing that when I go to Costa Rica, et cetera. So I love the strategy. I think that's brilliant. Keep going.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I will say from in my regular everyday life, I would not do that. So exactly what you said, travel is the perfect small encapsulated time to be able to do it. Now, what I did as like a takeaway from you, what I have done is I'll look at my closet periodically, usually at the season change, and go, did I really wear that? You know what? I haven't worn that. Let me put that in my back closet and see if I reach for it. So it's a different way of doing the outfit tracking. And that has actually made my closet much more efficient and much
Mm.
more ease in it because I don't have a lot of things in there that I don't really wear. I've been
Perfect.
editing as we go. So, you
Gold
know,
star for you, Missy. Gold star.
hey, fashion gold star. Hack number two, and this may be an obvious one, but I travel so much that I leave my toiletry kit totally packed. And
Yes.
sometimes I rotate things in and out. Like there's definitely different things that I need in Costa Rica or things that I don't need there. But I leave my toiletry kit packed. And this is I mean, I'm a little bit of a health nerd and I'm a health professional. So when we do a trip like Costa Rica or anywhere, I want to optimize for performance. So I have a giant Ziploc of supplementation that is my travel supplementation in case anybody gets a GI bug, in case anybody gets
Mm.
an injury. By anyone, I mean myself or my husband, but also anyone that we travel with or know.
Sure.
So I have all of that stuff, and that is ready to roll with us, including things for allergies. So leaving that natural remedy kit packed. I do also have a few key pieces that no matter where I go, they just come with me.
Mm.
And barring Costa Rica, I wouldn't take a vest to Costa Rica, but my down vest, I take that anywhere because that automatically upgrades. And then I also have, the Lululemon Vinyasa scarf.
Hmm.
And any good scarf would work, but I love the Lululemon Vinyasa scarf. I've gifted it to many people because it's so easy, great for on the plane. That goes in my carry-on. I've used it as a blanket when there's not enough blankets. So it's the perfect travel piece. Love, 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 love that.
So
So you know,
soft too. I
ah,
love that.
it's
That
so
it'll,
soft.
yeah, and it has the snaps, right?
Mhm.
Isn't the one with the snaps? So you can
Yes.
literally like you could actually wrap it and wear it like a full scarf or open it up, is what you're saying.
They have, yes, and they actually have a really adorable video where you can make it into a little jacket slash shrug.
I
So cute.
mean,
And they also, it's perfect because it's stretchy, hooks over your feet like if you're putting it on an airplane, if you want to hook it on the end of your feet or you
uh-huh.
stretch it out as a blanket. So I just love, love, love that. So that is always there, as are my electronics are in their own separate little thing. So I have my
Smart.
extra battery pack, my travel charger, I feel like I have a couple other random things in there
Yeah.
that always, always stay with me for
But the
sure.
go-to, I love that idea around just keep it handy. And if you're a seasoned traveler, this is probably something that you're accustomed to doing, but it does help minimize and keep that traveling light easier for you so that you have everything you need. You could even pull out a few things that you might not, depending on your location, right? So it feels like it's always I'm a similar thing. I do a very similar process for having all my
Yeah.
stuff together.
Yeah, exactly. It's already in the bag. And speaking of that, I mean, I am a huge fan of the suitcase stackers. Amazon has, and these have been around for a while, and I recently upgraded mine where they actually compress. So Amazon has these beautiful ones that
Yeah.
really compress your stuff and they keep it nice.
Hmm.
So I will pack and use those to conserve space. It'll keep your clothes nice and I use them to conserve space. And true confessions, this is sort of hack number four, maybe, is um I always try and pack ahead of time
Hmm.
because if it's last minute, I'm gonna take more stuff. And sometimes that inevitably you have a busy week and it's like, I just can't do it. But I'll be flying out this Wednesday. And so I've essentially packed this evening. I'll put everything in my little suitcase stacker. So literally, okay, that part is done. It's ready to roll. That goes in the suitcase and keeps everything nice and tidy.
Yeah, I think that's such a great I'm a big fan, and this is also part of the travel packing process with me about you gotta think about what you're gonna take in advance. And I would go so far as, and we're gonna talk about this, but you gotta try on what you're going to take. So that to me is a really important part because I can do like a flat lay of an outfit all day long, like, oh, I like these pants with this top and these shoes. And then I put it on and I'm like, oh no, I don't really like how this feels or fits.
That is literally my next thing is that
I'm
you've got
sorry, I
to
didn't
try it
mean to
on.
jump ahead.
That's okay. No, it's perfect. Perfect timing. But it literally is that you have to try it on and try it on not late at night. Try it
Right.
on, ideally where you have a little bit of time and space to kind of look at it and go, okay. Because sometimes there's something where it's like, I'm not feeling this.
That's right.
And it's not necessarily about like, oh, I feel like my belly or my butt is big today. It's more
Sure.
like, oh, I'm just not fully feeling this. Or, you know what? This worked when I did this trip in the fall to go teach, but now it's winter and my skin tone is a little bit different. or whatever it is. So
That's right.
always, always, always try on. And I'm so appreciative. I mean, Maria, we did that process. We just did that process
Yeah.
together, and it was so critical to do that, including the jewelry.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
happy to
let's
share
dig in.
more.
This is
Yeah.
great. I mean, so these are great hacks, and I really love that you have thought about what really streamlines your process and helps you get clear to what you want to bring each time. And I think for anybody, again, if you're a seasoned traveler or you're still kind of getting used to getting on a plane and getting off out the door, these are great ways to help you really keep that process concise. And one of the things that Missy and I got to do recently, which she's already alluded to, was going through this process together. Let's talk a little bit about, let's give our listeners kind of what you're up to, Missy, and what kind of so they have a picture in their mind about what you're about to go do and what our goal was.
Perfect. So a couple times a year, I teach a 3-day class, a 3-day seminar, and literally I am on stage for all 3 days. And when I say on stage, like 8:15 to usually around 5. And there's some workshop time. So I am on my feet all day and I'm walking around and checking on people as they're workshopping and I'm on stage doing lecture. And how to look professional as well as be comfortable. And true confessions, I am not a huge fan of heels. And this is like one time where, for whatever reason, I do wear a heel. And I like to wear a heel at least the first 2 days, if not all 3 days of that trip. So it's also, even though the room is cool, I am, because I'm on stage, because sometimes there's lighting, sometimes whatever, I'm also, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm teaching a technique that works with people's emotions. So I'm doing live demos. So I tend to run really warm when I'm
Mm,
fully plugged in and fully engaged like that. So I'm fine teaching in sleeveless. And and I can teach wearing sleeves, but I definitely can't wear, a third piece on top or a big
right.
layer on top. So it's kind of a particular thing of how to have ease and comfort and still maintain a certain element of professionalism and maybe even more elevated than I would wear in my office.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm thank you for sharing that because I think it's important anytime you're traveling to kind of understand the scope of what you're about to go into, right? And whatever the purpose is, the function, how your body runs and feels best. I always ask people about, do you run cold? Do you run warm? Like these are important factors when you're packing and you're thinking about what you're about to go do. And in particular, if you're going to be the person that's like the featured speaker or the person that everybody's paying attention to versus a participant, there's a different kind of function in that too. So these are important things to be asking yourself and considering when you're packing.
Well, one of the things that comes up, Maria, is really interesting is this is some of the people that are in the class I've met before once or twice, or maybe more than that. And some are completely new, not just to me, but new to this technique. So
Yeah.
the idea of wanting to make a first impression, and
Yeah.
really it's what is going to be the authentic expression of me in that space that is also me feeling 100% confident and comfortable. So knowing that there may be things that I wear in my clinic where it's like, oh, this is pretty comfortable and this is generally me. And in this space and in this role, wanting to um, make a good impression, but also really it's more about me feeling like I am my most powerful self, not in the sense of powerful lording over, but that I'm bringing all of myself and my full energy to this space. And ideally, I'd feel that way every day.
Hmm.
It just seems to be a little bit more of a crystallized importance.
Yeah, and this is why I will go to my grave saying the important tool that clothing is.
Mm.
And for if you are willing to lean into the work to access and find clothing that actually can really represent how you want to feel, it's like that little edge that you give yourself, whether or not your audience or whoever you come into contact with gets it or observes it or not, because we don't have control over other people, but you show up in that best version of yourself, doing all the hard things, right? From getting up on stage. I mean, it's not easy, no matter how practiced you are or how comfortable you are. You still have to get up there and do it. Show up, be on your game, have to deliver, have to have clarity in your expression and be able to teach, right? And This is a very intimate kind of situation too, where you're connecting with emotion. So, like, knowing all of these things kind of go into the process of how you want to show up. And this is probably why people get overwhelmed with packing, because they recognize I need it to do something for me. I need my clothes to do some of these things for me. And it can be hard to make some of those decisions, especially when you're prepping for your presentation, or you're you're gearing yourself up for travel, and you're anticipating leaving your home. So you got to take care of stuff here, right? Travel has such a varied and complex level of commitment and focus that we have to deliver. And this is why I find the traveling light process to be such a handy tool to helping kind of like move the noise out and get really clear about, like, what do I need to do? So Missy's sharing with me, I need to be comfortable because I'm going to be on stage. I might get warm. I need to look professional because I'm in this professional space. Some of these people are engaging me for the first time. So it's kind of first impression opportunity. So I want to show up as my best self, really offering the best version of me as I'm in this space. And also giving myself the freedom and flexibility to not have to feel awkward in your clothes, or right. Like, it's more than just like comfort fabric, but having that comfort level with yourself in your clothes. That, I mean, if you, as you hear all that, it's like, it's a lot of responsibility to put on a piece of clothing, right? And which is why it's helpful to have somebody help you through this process. So Missy calls me, she calls the MFD hotline, and we have this great conversation. It took about an hour, I would say. And we were able to identify, she had 3 days of being on stage and presenting and doing her thing. So we were able to identify 3 different outfits. So, Missy, let's talk a little bit about, so people can kind of grasp how that was for you. What were some things we were doing, some questions you were asking, et cetera.
Yeah. So it's interesting, Maria, because it's also right. This is not my first rodeo, so to speak. And I was startled and had to let go of, well, wait a second. Why don't I just wear the same outfits that I've worn, the other classes I've taught? And oh, well, this is new unit of time. And I was thinking about this after we hung up too, that hung up our FaceTime call, which
Yeah.
was great to have like, okay, here's what this looks like. Less than a week ago. Yeah, about a week ago. I was basically wearing a bikini and a cover up for 14 days. So that's also the dissonance of, oh, wait, I have to completely change. It was fantastic to have everything kind of pulled out. Thankfully, I had already weeded through a few things myself, and I had sent you a few pictures.
Mhm.
And that's where you graciously were. I don't know if you brought it up or I brought it up, but like, I could use some help with this. So I had weeded through a few things. And again, you asked the perfect question that you mentioned in our last episode, which is, how does this make you feel? Okay, this is almost hitting this. Now try this with that. And so we actually, in real time, had a chance to try on different pieces, including the footwear, which totally can change an outfit, including the jewelry, which totally changes an outfit. And I wound up trying on every outfit that I am going to wear, as well as the different things that go with it.
Mhm. And this was such an important part of the process that, you know, the beauty of, I think, traveling light, and I'll go to my grave on this one too, is about functionally knowing how accessories can change the look of an outfit. And this is also something that I would really encourage as my little hack, if I could have one too in the midst here, about when you're traveling and you want to keep your kind of quantity to a minimum, that truly accessories can change the entire look of an outfit. And so if you rewear something or wear it in a very similar way more than once, changing up your jewelry, changing up, adding an accessory like a scarf, having a different handbag, changing shoes, wearing bracelets, necklaces, earrings, a headband. These are all different ways. I'm not saying wearing all those things at the same time. I'm just suggesting having some variability in those things can really help an outfit look very different from day to day. And so you're not having to pack two completely different outfits. And even if you had, so in this instance, Missy is actually wearing 3 different outfits. They're all different pieces of clothing. but there are two different types of jumpsuits. So you might look and say, well, she's already wearing a jumpsuit, right? And yet they were different enough to be able to wear them in these different circumstances. But we changed up the jewelry so the look was very different from one to the other. And so it gave you, I hope, this feeling of like, okay, I'm transitioning from one look to one day to the next day. And it's kind of giving, I can't take credit for this. There is a lovely woman who I follow on Instagram who covers fashion for the royals in England. And she talks about the carousel look, meaning when you take pictures of a particular outfit from one day to the next day to the next day. So let's talk about our lovely Princess Kate, and she might be out in the world and she's wearing XYZ outfit one day, next day, next day. The idea is that you could see the carousel of the looks, all kind of next to each other and sort of how they feel cohesive and how they go together and they tell a story. And so I had that idea and that thought about your trip, Missy. You had these 3 days. People are going to see you from day to day, similar audience. So it's like the carousel in their mind of like how the three looks cohesively look together and how it felt and looked together. So that was also an important part of the story, right? And being able to know, again, this is a specific example around a professional, outing, but it gave purpose to the cohesion of all three looks. Normally, I might not always think about that if you're not going to be kind of in the same venue or doing a similar thing from day to day. Just an observation.
Yeah, and it was great to actually plan, okay, day one, day two, day three, because each of those days has a different note. The third of which is a little bit maybe more casual. So stacking the looks of like, okay, the most professional or the most put together, or for me, what felt the most powerful. And I'm going to use the word coherent. It was like very coherent, was like this one particular jumpsuit on that day where I felt great in it as soon as I put it on. And then on the last day, maybe a little bit more casual, a little bit softer look. People have gotten to know me. We've interacted a little bit more. So it's not at all a slacker look,
Yeah.
but it's definitely maybe a softer one of those versus on a trip where I would pack, okay, I need 5 outfits and or 5 things. Okay, I'm going to wear these jeans 3 separate times with these different tops, and it doesn't matter what day I wear the tops. So this
Right.
was very, very particular.
So this is an interesting example. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about travel as this, like, maybe it's the small step that we could take when we're thinking about our personal style or even our life, and we're trying to make some changes or kind of get in touch with a more authentic version of ourselves. Like, who am I? How do I want to show up? Sometimes doing that on the day to day might feel too big or too hard, right? And travel, as I said, can be these condensed, kind of consolidated experiences where you might be able to try this out a little bit. So, again, thinking about, this number 5 in the sequence, the next right step that you might want to take to be able to help you access more of this authenticity. Maybe use your next travel experience as a little experiment this way to play with what are the looks, what are some of the function that you need your clothing and your wardrobe to serve, and how can you really be intentional and selective about the pieces that need to be brought along for your experience that really actually feel like you. So it's not the alter ego that's going to be living, in this other life, and as magical as that might feel or sound, but truly playing with this as a just an example for how you might do this more in your everyday life, but maybe this travel experience can give you a chance to play with it and try it on, no pun intended, but to do this a little bit more digestible in a way that's a little bit more digestible. And to think about some of the hacks that we've shared that around packing, how to keep things light, how to keep them simple and consolidated. That really helps sort of, as I said, reduce the noise and gets you maybe a little bit closer and clearer to taking your right next step. Missy, any last thoughts or ideas from you as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, Maria, as you were talking, I was thinking about we both come from a particular educational background, and I was thinking about really this is like the praxis of fashion or the praxis of wardrobe. So praxis being this like active practice of reflection,
Yeah.
and the idea of, okay, from Costa Rica, I have consolidated and really, really narrowed down my wardrobe for Costa Rica. And that little reflective step after a trip is what you're talking about, where you
Yeah.
go, oh, what did I wear? Because usually in there is the hint that points to and really informs, like, oh, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And as we continue to lean in more and more to authentically who we are, and
Mhm.
it pairs really, really nicely with what you've always encouraged me. And I believe we talked about this on the last episode, but having your style words emerging.
Mm.
And it's not that you randomly pick words like I want to be, but it's acknowledging what is already there, what
Mm.
is already present. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm a jeans and white t-shirt girl. I love my V-neck Madewell t-shirt or whatever V-neck white t-shirt, jeans, great pair of jeans, fits great. I can wear them multiple times. And then I might zhuzh it up with my motorcycle jacket. So I've
Yeah.
got that little bit of rock and roll, but finding your style words, let them emerge and
Mm.
let your trip inform it. And then I would also say this is practice. So it's a process. And the
Yes.
idea of, okay, you know what? Don't be afraid of the big suitcase. Sometimes
Totally.
it's way easier to take the big suitcase and have it be a little empty than to sit on the small suitcase to try and get it to close.
I'm so grateful that you said that. And in fact, as I was thinking, saying it, I was thinking, that's why it's practice, right? We're all emerging and evolving and learning, and it informs every time we do it going forward. So allow
Mm.
yourself the freedom to take step number 5 and know that it doesn't have to be the end of the story. It's just the right next step, just to try it out, see if this works and see if this helps. And ultimately, as we experiment and play and practice, we will get closer. I see it, I know it, I practice it myself every day, and trust that whatever emerges out of these experiences continues to give you more information going forward. So, thanks so much, Missy, for joining. As always, I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast.
For sure. So happy and grateful to be here. It's so fun. So thanks for the opportunity.
So, friends, we are so glad that you joined us, and stay tuned for our next episode. See you soon. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed what you've heard, I would appreciate you taking the time to leave a review on the podcasting platform you're using, and share this episode with others who you think might really enjoy these conversations about personal style. For more information all about MFD Style services, you can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com, on Instagram at mfd_style, where I post almost 5 days a week, or send me an email at maria@mfdstyle.com. I also have a weekly email I send to subscribers, so I will include the link to that sign up in the show notes. So until next time, friends, remember to love yourself and then love yourself some more.